Hello, and welcome to Getting Started with Azure Migration with Opsgility. My name is Kit Skinner. I will be walking you through this presentation today. A little bit about myself. I am a senior cloud training architect here at Opsgility. I'm responsible for delivering all the instruction here at Opsgility, as well as delivering the content around it. I have several years of experience of working with Azure, going back 6 or 7 years with Azure itself, as well as almost 20 years in the IT field. Spent several of it doing consulting, but a lot of it actually being out in the field as being one of the people responsible for the infrastructure and getting those pieces set up. So I try and bring that experience and knowledge to this and help people understand what's going on. If at any time you feel want to reach out to me and ask me any questions, feel free to send me an email. You can also look me up on LinkedIn or Twitter if you like. And then also we have with us today Haley with our team here. Haley, care to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Thanks. So I'm a strategic account executive here at Opsgility, and I'm here to help organizations learn to shift their IT spend from overhead to innovation in order to complete their adoption of the Microsoft Cloud. And so to tell you a little bit about Opsgility, at Opsgility, we partner with organizations across the globe, and our goal is to help them with their digital transformation journey, and we do so through our portfolio of services. And so with those services, we are a CSP or a cloud service provider, so we can help you identify which licenses your organization needs based on your goals, and then we can also manage those licenses for you. We also have a team of consultants available to assist with any projects that you may have on your task list. Anything as small or as large as you need, we can help you build it, we can build it for you, and then we can also help you train it to learn how to manage it and maintain it. Additionally, we have a virtual conference platform called Virtual Conference Manager, and it's an application that is powered by Microsoft Teams. And so the platform allows you to engage your audience safely, conveniently, internationally, as well as we are now prepared for the new hybrid environment that is come about. And lastly, we have our training and enablement. And so we help you leverage the Microsoft Cloud tools through developing enterprise learning plans. We have dedicated training that's available virtually or on site. And then we have open enrollment classes. And lastly, we customize courses for specifically what you need based off of your goals. So we're excited to have this opportunity to present this little bit to you about Azure Migration.
All right, thank you very much, Haley. Just going to give you a quick overview. We're going to be talking primarily about Azure Migrate, what it is, how it functions, and then we're going to go over a lot of the key features that's available to you. And then in addition, we're going to talk about why you would do this, what the advantages of it are, and what some of the key aspects of it around the Azure platform in general. So first off, let's just talk a little bit about what Azure Migrate actually is. So what Azure Migrate is it's a centralized hub of a lot of additional tools that they have in Azure that provide you an interface for bringing any resources into Azure that may exist either on-premise or maybe in another virtualized environment or in another cloud space, whatever it is. And there are tools around the specific type of resources that you're looking for, whether it be something like servers or databases, or something along the lines of a web application, or you're bringing in a VDI infrastructure, or if it's just something where you're going to bring in a large amount of data, for instance, like a file server or a large repository of images, something that you're going to bring in there. There are tools that they bring together to help you assess your environment, identify what those pieces are that need to be brought along, perform a migration of getting the data up to it, and then validating that the information is there and doing it in a project fashion so we can make sure that it maintains your workflow and has consistent information along the way. The tools that are involved with it range from multiple different systems, whether it be just the actual migration of the data, but there's also assessments and discovery tools to help you identify the resources that are in those environments. So with that in mind, we're going to look at a lot of the pieces that are involved with Azure Migrate itself. As I mentioned before, you'll have the discovery, the assessment, and the migrate tools. And then there's also containerization options to actually bring applications directly into a container environment. And these all are designed to be a project workflow process where you start with the discovery area, you identify what resources are out in your environment. Then we provide an assessment to actually identify how those resources are utilized, what type of processing power they need, what type of storage they're looking for, how much RAM they need, maybe if it's something that is actually viable to move across, or maybe it's something that is have some issues that are known to cause particular problems moving into the cloud, and some ways around that. And so that's where the assessment phase will help you identify those resources and what they would need in the cloud. Once we've identified that, then we will actually be able to migrate it. And all along through this process, we're maintaining the information about those resources all through the path, whether it be something that you discovered by doing an Active Directory lookup and identifying the servers, and then identifying those resources and patches that are on that system and what was existing in it, and then moving into an assessment phase to actually monitor the resources and see what's actually utilized on that on a regular basis. And then finally, once we determine what resources are needed, doing an actual migration, and all that information is kept along through the entire migration process. Okay. There are a lot of tools that are then specific to the different types of workloads. There's some tools that are needed specifically for working with servers, for instance, whether you're running in a Hyper-V environment or a VMware environment, where you're moving from a physical server, wherever it happens to be. These are just an operating system that you want to move into the cloud. These can be either Linux or Windows virtual machines, or physical systems that you want to move into Azure. There are also agents that we can utilize to run just against the hosts of your virtualized environments, so that we don't necessarily have to interfere with the running operating systems. And then there are agent-based ones if that's not an option for you. If you can't run something directly on the host, we can deploy directly into the agents and do our assessment within that information, or within those hosts as well. And the migration tools when we're working with a server is they're utilizing the disk information that's happening within the operating system, so that anything that's written out to the disk, we're actually capturing that and moving that into the cloud automatically. So that way we can ensure that the information that is up in the cloud prior to your actual migration is kept very close in step with your systems that you're migrating from. In addition, we can also do what's called a test migration with your server environments. And what that allows you to do is you can do your replication of your servers, get the information into Azure, and then without affecting your production environment, we can spin up a test environment in Azure. This allows you to test your entire environment within the Azure space exactly as if you had done your full migration without interfering with your production space. This lets us identify that maybe any application dependencies that weren't caught in the assessment period, or any customizations that we had to do, validate that those were working, and let you test and run as much information as you like. This service is included with any migration. You're just paying for any compute resources that you use in Azure for your test phase, and you can run as many tests as you like. So if you want to run just a test for an hour, validate if things work or not, and do a break fix, that's fine. Run the test, and you tell it you're done with your test, it'll clean up all those resources, and you only paid for an hour's worth of compute time. If you want to run it over multiple weeks because you want to do stress tests or additional information, you can do that as well. You can also pick and choose individual systems. So it's not like you have to run the entire environment for 3 weeks if you want to do a stress test. If you know the key systems are involved in it, you can just move those particular systems up there and run those at it. And just like any other resource in Azure, when that's running a virtual machine, you can schedule the time periods that those are actually running. So if you want to shut them down at night, you can still shut those down. They're full-fledged virtual machine environments running in Azure. They're just not a full production space. So you want to make sure that you validate that it's working, and then clean up your test phase, and then perform your full migration when you're actually ready.
Hey, Kit, we have a quick question right here, if I can interrupt you.
Sure, yeah.
So someone said, it sounds like this is a lot of work. How much, do you know approximately how long this takes in terms of for a small business versus a large business?
Yeah, so it obviously it's going to depend a lot on your environment. However, a small environment can be done usually within a couple of weeks, depending on what how small the actual environment is. There are actually some very large environments spanning multiple data centers I've done that have done the entire environment in a matter of 2 months end to end. That was pretty big push because there were thousands of servers involved, and we had a lot of teams on it. I've also seen some clients that spread it out over 12 months. The technology itself is going to be only dependent on the speed of your systems and the speed of your internet.
Okay.
We obviously have to get your data up there, so that's going to be the biggest dependency that we're going to have in it. But you can actually do your cutover of the migration itself within a matter of 30 minutes. It's just getting that replication set up, doing your testing, and all those pieces. The rest of it can happen very quickly.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Okay, so that pretty much covers a lot of what the server migration tools were for it. There's a lot of pieces that would be involved in actually keeping track of that information, letting you know what the state of those systems are, and being able to get those communicated across. And that is all captured as part of your migration tool. So you can identify what the settings need to be for the individual systems and pull that across from your assessment and getting that into the environment. And additional options if you're going to be doing a database migration. With a database migration, there are a couple of options with it. You could keep it on a virtual machine. So if you have a database running on a VM, there are options to move it across with a VM natively. However, databases themselves, if you've worked with them in the past, especially if they're very intensive I/O processes, you may find that trying to capture all those disk writes live, especially log file information, is not necessarily the most opportune feature with a migration tool like that we utilize for server migrations. For those types of resources, it may make more sense to actually move them directly into SQL PaaS, the Azure PaaS environment, PaaS meaning a platform as a service. And what that means is that the SQL environment is actually managed and run by Azure. And you have your own databases that are running on top of that. And there are migration tools that allow you to move those directly across. Now you can move those directly from those databases that are running on your virtual machine directly into SQL servers. It can help identify what those databases are. If there's schema or changes inside the database that we can't necessarily support in Azure, we'll help you identify those and give recommendations on how those might be able to be fixed. Also, if there's anything like a certain code within the stored procedures or other environments of your database that aren't necessarily supported in SQL PaaS, it will identify that those are particular limitations. I'd also provide you tools to be able to migrate directly into a managed instance if you don't want to go to the full PaaS environment, but want to do a hybrid managed instance. It'll help you with those pieces as well. And then it'll give you recommendations if you want to move over to a virtual machine still, but maybe the migration tool isn't the best aspect, and help you identify how you could migrate to a clustered environment and something that is a failover set for your SQL servers. So there's a few different options along with this, but this is helping you identify what those pieces would be, what type of resources you're going to need for those databases, what type of pull that they're going to have, and the information that we need to move up into Azure and how you would utilize that in your space. You'll see that there's also a data migration assistant that helps you do the replication of it. And what the assistant is going to do is going to allow you to replicate your schema across so that you can validate that the structure and everything has the information you want. And then it'll help you do your migration of your data across. And there's a few different options around that. You can do something that, if you work with DBA, something similar to log shipping, where basically just sending up the changes as they go across via the logs. There's also cutover options where you can just replicate the data across. Now, a lot of these are going to be dependent on your database and your environment, but that's what the assessment is there to help you identify which databases are going to be used in which fashion and how you can best utilize those. In addition to the database and server migration tools, we also have the web application migration assistance. What this will allow you to do is assess the viability of any existing ASP.NET environment that you have, help you identify which ones could move into app services, which ones may be a little bit problematic, or which ones just wouldn't necessarily fit directly into an ASP.NET space in Azure. It'll help you identify the size of the app service that you'd be looking at, as well as any of the concerns that found, any of the conditions that may cause particular issues, and give you links to articles that might help you resolve those issues and help you identify what's available in that. This lets you avoid having to move a virtual machine up in Azure that was just running a website, when you could be more economically friendly by putting it directly into an app service rather than a general purpose virtual machine. We find that there's usually a better efficiency of either resource utilization by putting into a specific, moving into a specialized tool rather than putting into a generalized virtual machine. In addition, there are partner tools provided by independent software vendors, ISVs, that can assist you and plug in directly to the Azure Migrate space. So if you're familiar with any of these tools, or you have a space that might work better for these types of environments, these tools will integrate directly into the Azure Migrate space. If they're doing an assessment, they'll plug in the assessment results into the Migrate tool, and then you can feed that into whatever tool you're going to use for Migrate purposes. If they're Migrate service only, then they will import the information from the assessment and use that to help identify how those resources will be deployed in Azure. These are the current ISV offerings out there, and there are always more being brought on periodically, but these are the common ones that we'll see in most environments that people are looking for. Again, Carbonite for the migration, Cloudimize helps you assess and determine some costs. According to technology, we also do the SS and Migrate. Device 42 is the assess servers. Lakeside will help you do VDI assessments specifically. Rackware is working with migration of the servers. Turbinotic with the assessments. Unify Cloud with assessing the servers and databases. And then Zerto for migrating the servers. Now, all of those particular tools are actually provided. There are tools that are native to the Azure Migrate service as well for doing the assessments, migration, and discovery. The one assessment is one difference that the Lakeside Assess VDI is specific to VDI implementations that is not currently mirrored in an Azure solution, but you can plug the Lakeside tools directly into that information and then utilize the Azure Migrate tools to migrate those VDIs. Okay. In addition, the tools with Azure Migrate itself integrate directly with the security tools that are native to Azure itself. You can utilize the Azure Active Directory for central identity authentication. You can also utilize privileged access for your migration, so you can use RBAC permissions for not only the migration itself, but also the resulting services that is adhered to and work directly with any of the Azure Migrate space. And then there's also the standard data protection that's available in Azure. It's only going to be replicated into your subscription. You are the only one that's going to have access to that data, and all the data is kept encrypted in transit along the way, as well as at the hardware level in the Azure space. And so what's in it for me? And the question is, why would we be doing this at all? And the moving to the cloud, the getting the information set up, why would we be doing this? There's an additional tool that Azure provides called a Movere assessment for the environment. And what this is going to do is look at your resources, look at how they're utilized today, and look at how they could be best utilized in the cloud, and give you an assessment based on what it sees that a particular VM is needing, and tell you what the cost would be for that server over so many years or months or whatever time frame you're going to be looking at. And it can also let you do that comparison as to what it would cost to run that in an on-premise environment. It'll also show you some options around some different discount options, let you identify that maybe if there's a server that you are running on a high capacity disk, and maybe you could drop it down to more of a low tier disk, or maybe there's a virtual machine that you have over provisioned with lots of additional CPU that you don't necessarily need in Azure, and so therefore you could scale it back and maybe make it a little bit smaller. And so it'll provide all those assessments in its report to let you know how those services are best utilized. In addition, it's an ongoing process. So you can run it for a day or so and get some information, but that's always a good snapshot of how you actually utilize your resources, especially if you run it on like a weekend time frame, or towards the end of the week where maybe people aren't doing things. And it's best more if you run it over a longer period of time. It'll do a better assessment and help identify how those resources are actually being utilized. It can also help you identify interaction between systems and let you determine what is going to be your best course of action for moving virtual machines across any ones that are dependent on one another. So it's a very big tool for helping you identify what your costs are going to be as an estimate and help you identify how you can optimize your spending dollar to give you the best resources for your particular deployment. Okay. And then in addition, there's a lot of key points as to why people would maybe move to the cloud and maybe move to Azure specifically. Azure has 54 regions spread out throughout the globe. Azure Migrate can allow you to move to any of these regions. You can move to one region for all your resources, or you can move them to different regions depending on what's needed for your particular geography. So it lets you work with those spaces and help you identify what those need to be, whether it needs to be something that's close to you or something that's available in disaster recovery region in another area, let you help work with all those different areas. In addition, there's over 300 types of data services in Azure, and these are just the types of resources that are available to you whenever you're doing these deployments. There's a small snapshot of the types of resources that you may find in Azure down below in those icon messes, but this is just a small bit of what you can do within Azure. Now, Azure Migrate is going to focus on a few key resources, your virtual machines, your app services, your databases. But once you get those resources in there, it becomes much easier to migrate a lot of those services and help you utilize a lot of those additional features in Azure. So that you can take something that maybe was a general purpose virtual machine and be able to integrate with an Azure service to help better optimize that resource, maybe scale back down to just running on a container instance, or maybe even moving down to a functionalist space. It lets you utilize all those tools that are available in an Azure space without having to be tied into a physical hardware environment, where maybe you have some aging spaces or you don't actually have the ability to maintain it, or you're still paying for a lease, or whatever it happens to be. It lets you move into a cloud dynamic space within the Azure environment. In addition, there's integrated monitoring tools in Azure for all the resources. You can use the Azure Monitor to identify the health of your resources, and you can integrate in log analytics to get some additional details. The management and versatility of those pieces are consistent in all environments. So you definitely want to make sure that you're able to utilize those pieces in Azure. And this is just one of the many, or just a few of the many reasons why you move into Azure. All right, so that is basically what Azure Migrate is, a few of the key features, and kind of went over what was in it for you. I hope this gave you a lot of information and was helpful to you in your environment looking to move to the cloud. All right, Haley, you have a few words?
Well, thanks, Kit. We really appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for joining us today. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact us at sales@opsgility.com, and we will get you scheduled with a strategic account team. And again, we're here to help you build your cloud strategy. We're here to assist with creating applications and all of your migration needs. We can help you get from A to Z with as much or as little support as you need, whether it's just one class or if you need us to complete the migration for you. So in the meantime, please feel free to attend our next webinar and check us out at the link below. Thank you so much.